Thomas, if you want to
Here we
make me a
go.
host,
Started.
let people in.
Mhm.
Or Tim.
Good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, depending on where and when you're watching this broadcast. I'm Thomas Fessler, my friends, and this is Disclosure Tonight. Happy Saturday, November 29th, 2025, the one day of the week that we turn our production time back to, London time, my friends. It's 10 o'clock across the big pond. I want to welcome everybody in on that note. Before we get on to the show tonight, I want to welcome in our audience. I'm talking about the people in the chat. So if you want me to say hello, jump in the chat. Say hi, folks. Let's go ahead and see what we have out there. I see, oh God, my eyes are blurry today for some reason. Let's welcome in April. Brown Silverado. We've got Brennan England. Brains is here along with Cap K. Cat's around along with Firefly and Ghost Fixter. I see Grateful Benny is around. Good to see you, Grateful. That you are grateful, my friend. Gray Hair Discoveries is here along with Hawaii 5-0. We've got Hurrah for John. Kane Hart is here along with Kelly Brote and those piercing blue eyes. Good to see you, Kelly. We've got Lon here along with Ms. Cuss Out. Nightshade Giggle is around. Giggles, my friend. Niles Guy, our resident pitbull from the state of Illinois. Good to see you, Niles Guy. The real Mr. X is here, along with Rundersome Joey. We got Roni Deal, Rough Reddy, and Sam is in the chat, along with Scooby Dooby Gooby. Good to see you, my friend. Shinobi Wan Kenobi is here. Tenbris is here, along with the Chromosome Cowboy. Turtlehead 420. Weedlander, I like that one, and our friends from Northern Idaho, Two Midgets on a Horse. How about that? On that note, let's go ahead and jump into the studio and jump into it. Hey, folks, welcome to the show. Yeah, we should have a good one today. This is our kind of our recap show of the week, but yeah, I know we just had a show yesterday, so we're going to use some of the content from yesterday's show, but get into it a bit deeper. And leading this off, we've got a, if you want to call it, a statement that came from Little Marco Rubio, as he used to be called, on February 15th, 2023, talking about there's no reason not to publicly release everything, about UFOs to a degree. And it's amazing how things change once an individual gets into the White House. As part of this conversation, I want to bring in one of our guests that we have with us today. Let's welcome in Gene Sticko. Gene, how the hell are you, my friend?
Good. I'm well. Just technical note, Thomas. The back here, we're hearing, it doesn't sound like your microphone's on back here.
Thank you very much. Give me a second to go ahead and stretch out the screen. Change that to my Meet Audio. Does this sound better now? There you go.
Oh, there we go.
You're no longer listening to the recliner microphone. You're listening to my microphone. I had to help you with the mic before we started the show, and now you help me. I appreciate that. And for anyone that's worrying about where the mics are, we've got our own mics here, but Mike is out dealing with some family fun and family shopping for Black Friday. So that's got to be fun with 5 kids and a wife and crowded stores. Nothing that I would wish on anybody, Gene.
That is what my nightmares are made of.
Oh, absolutely. On that note, let's go ahead and get this first clip going of Marco Rubio. Where can I find this? Here we go. Let's play this. Actually, go to full solo. Okay, just a quick 40-second clip, but here we go.
The 3 incidents this weekend, there's nothing new about them other than the fact that they were shot down. Last year alone, the intelligence community received over 117 UAP reports, unidentified aerial phenomena reports, of things flying over our airspace, oftentimes over restricted areas and military areas, for which there's no explanation. Some of those stories, by the way, are eerily similar to descriptions of the 3 this week. We need to take this seriously, not because of aliens or flying saucers, but because of the possibility that some foreign adversary has developed the capability to intrude on our airspace without us detecting it. And so I hope that we'll begin to take it seriously now, and that the Department of Defense will share that data with the office that Congress created to analyze this, because that's not happening right now.
So there we go, Gene. Interesting to see Marco Rubio talking about this. As I mentioned just a second ago, let me find this here. It's interesting. Once people are, if you want to call it, they're outside of the White House. They're outside of the executive branch. They call for disclosure like Trump did on the drones. He said, yeah, I'll disclose all the information on the drones. And then once he's in office, he kind of pulls back and says, well, I really can't talk about it, but everything's okay. It seems like that whole executive branch cover-up, like we've been talking about here for years, Gene, seems to be really the crux behind why we're not getting any disclosure.
No, exactly. I mean, we've talked about it so much that everything, forget about right or wrong. It's what is politically beneficial in the moment. And that is the pure driver. Facts, though interesting, are irrelevant. What is the political win in the moment? And for Rubio to say that in 2023, that was a political win in that moment.
Yeah.
Holding off until they can find the next win is when it will come again.
Yeah, that's true. I guess maybe when there's that opportunity to go ahead and pull out the aliens are real card to go ahead and just fuck with everyone's mind around the planet and derail them, which is something that the Donald likes to do.
It is. I mean, and look at what's it called? The Genesis project now with the Department of Energy. Listen, I just look at all of these things as signals, right? And I try and look at them as positive signals towards disclosure. Things being put into motion and in place that at least begin to offer some excuses and framework, let's say, for bigger things to come. Because I think if he just came out at the Oval Office, on a random Wednesday morning because it's a slow news day, he just opens himself up for global critique. But if they can orchestrate, better, more controlled drips, and it's the results of something else that's happened rather than, a belief or just a secret thing or whatever, then that might lend more credibility to have that kind of structure behind Trump, which politically he needs. Yeah, being honest.
And I hope these drips are cumulative, not evaporative, meaning that we get the drips and they fade away before the next drip comes. We need something to give us some weight, some mass on this to clearly move things forward. And hopefully, like we talked about last night, there are people in the administration besides Marco. We've got Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence. We've got the former director of national intelligence, John Ratcliffe, which I think he made the most salacious and most in-depth statement from anybody who held a position within the executive branch about the information that they have. He's now the head of the CIA, which is supposedly part of the cover-up that was created to be there and to figure it out coming, back to Roswell when they created this CIA weeks after the Roswell incident happened in 1947.
Right. And is it age of disclosure? I mean, wasn't that the legacy program, right? CIA at the top, DOE, Air Force.
Air Force was there. DOE kind of came after because if you remember, at that time we had the Manhattan Project that was there, but they transferred over the UAP program into the Manhattan Project levels of secrecy because they consider this, a world game changer, I guess, for weaponry, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, that was choice number one of what to do with it.
Yeah, absolutely, my friend. Yeah, great conversation going on here. Thank you for being around. I appreciate your thoughts on this. You bring a fresh perspective into this conversation. Now, one of the things we had up last night was we had a video up from Fox News and Brett Baer talking about unexplained encounters. A lot of stuff happened in that video that we didn't unpack properly. So unlike last night, we're going to go ahead and go through this video. We're going to pause at many key points through it, talk about it, and then try to unpack what's there for the audience, because when you get so many things in a short period of time, you try to, if you want to call it, recap it at the end, you miss a lot of the details, like we did with some of the people in there who were saying some statements like Carl Nell going admitting that, again, same line as Grush, but coming from somebody else, that yes, we have recovered craft, and yes, we have recovered biologics or extraterrestrial or non-human intelligence entities that came along with some of these crash craft.
Yeah, and this is, I mean, for the audience, I think this is the most critical thing, because even here within the community, to try and dissect a clip like that, like you said, after watching it, right? Drinking through a fire hose. And, it's exponentially greater for the general public who has been on the outside of this for decades or have no introduction to it whatsoever. So this is a good way to educate the audience, to educate the people, in their circles of influence, and try to alleviate some of that pressure that, would certainly be overwhelming.
Yeah. And as we go ahead and talk about this, if you put a question in all caps, Gene, and for the audience, we're going to try and bring that up for myself or Gene or anyone else in the back to go ahead and answer that. So without any further ado, let's get to this and let's unpack this news broadcast. All right, get into there. We'll keep ourselves up here. Let's get back to it.
Over the last several weeks, we've brought to you interviews with a UFO whistleblower, a director who spoke with dozens of officials about possible secret government programs. And tonight, Brett Baer takes a closer look at some of those claims and speaks with a UAP researcher about what they are calling a government cover-up.
Okay, really quick, before we get into this, the person who's been calling it out for a cover-up the longest time is a person who's gotten the quietest, Tim Burchett. We miss you, Tim. He's the only one who always said, it's a cover-up. Let's continue.
Thanks, Aisha. Lawmakers from both sides of the aisle and other government officials believe they should know more about unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAPs. Tonight we look at reports on some of the secret government programs that are being alleged.
This is so secret. There have been very few people in our entire government that have been allowed or provided access to it.
A new documentary featuring former and current officials from across the federal government is attempting to connect the dots on secret knowledge of UAPs.
This is the biggest discovery in human history.
CIA officials, DIA officials, naval intelligence officials, the list goes on and on.
I served as the 4th Director of National Intelligence.
Director of Aviation Security in the National Security Council.
One-star admiral after 32 years of service.
Former Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet served as the Navy's chief oceanographer and meteorologist, and as acting administrator of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Why'd you take part in that? And of the voices in there, are you convinced that these are credible folks that are really coming forward for the first time?
All those folks are credible, Brett. They're all colleagues of mine. I've worked with them for years. This is going to change the arc of human history. The fact that we're not alone in the universe and that higher order non-human intelligences are visiting us and interacting with us, whose intent we really are unsure of still. That's just mind-blowing.
Not everyone is convinced by the film. The New York Times writes the claims are unprovable, and Variety calls it inconclusive.
Really quick, I want to, on this one, Gene, the United States government, more importantly, the DOD, has been known to fund rags like they just talked about Variety, etc., with regards to spreading false information, with regards to it, to run a disinformation campaign about the truth is coming out. Do you think any of these things that they're talking about now with regards to Variety and, let me get this back here, in the New York Times? Well, of course, the New York Times, potentially. But what is your thoughts on that? Could be spreading
absolutely.
disinformation.
And if you sort of look at it politically, strategically, right? So you've got the New York Times, you've got Variety, you've got the, left-leaning Hollywood
New York Post
establishment, right? Saying, oh, it's unprovable, etc. Also equally notable is the amount of attention Fox is giving to it, right? Though Dan Farris certainly, he made all the major media appearances. This is now going on the third, fourth, or more Brett Baer focused breakdown or carry on, of Age of Disclosure. So, I wonder in a sense if that is part of what you were talking about earlier, not letting the story evaporate, but continuing to try and, build momentum and build that framework in the, as far as public opinion goes. And certainly Fox is, well tied in with the administration now. So is Fox itself now part of the apparatus of disclosure, towards a bigger plan.
Yeah. I hear you, and there could be a bigger plan. I know we're hearing some things from the audience saying, I'm so sick of trust me, bro. But I guess we've got to remember sometimes when we're looking at this situation that especially those programs involved with the DOE, leaking any information is punishable by death. And that's no joke. It's the truth about the matter. And people say they'll never do it. I would highly beg to come across this differently than what they think. Your thoughts?
No, absolutely. And yeah, I think it would be highly unlikely that they're going to, we're going to see somebody in front of the firing squad for it. But, certainly the symbolism and certainly the idea that, and I know you've said it another time, whether the classified information is true or a complete fallacy, so long as it is within the classified space, you can be prosecuted for it. And so, the idea that even if something is fake sitting within, and you say, well, I just told something and we all know it's fake, doesn't matter. It's still under that realm. And, and there's the potential for very real consequences, and it doesn't necessarily, trying to be brave and out the information does not mean that when it goes to court, that information is going to come out to the public. It doesn't mean that you're right because they took you to court for it. So, the people who do it face very real consequences. And, we need to be a little more sensitive to that, maybe.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's just, we want to see this stuff come out, but don't forget, for those, there's been a lot of people lately who have come out against Lou and the other people who are part of the foundations, if you want to call it, of disclosure, because things are moving fast enough. But if you remember a year or so ago, Lou said, if you really want this to move forward, go get a hobby. Come back in 5 years and see where we're at. It's not going to happen overnight because everybody wants their disclosure and they want it now. But the truth, sometimes stuff this monumental, even though there's initiative going forward, it's going to take time.
Yeah. And I mean, you yourself, you've worked in big companies and big corporations. Oh, yeah. Even in business, things move slow. They move at a glacial pace. I mean, I've gotten stuff done in 18 months and people's minds are blown at how fast that was in the context of how long it normally takes things. And you start looking at institutions and companies that, don't operate in 5 and 10 year plans, but operate in 25 and 50 year plans,
yeah,
nothing happens fast.
Speaking from experience of different corporations I've worked for in the past at that corporate level for that point, look how many years it took back McDonald's to bring back the McRib.
That's it. It's something that impacts everybody here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and we do have a question coming from the audience. Niles guy asks, Thomas or Gene, why do you think Grush didn't include himself in the disclosure doc? Was it a strategic move? Well, Grush has been quiet since he had that one meeting with millionaires and billionaires in New York about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago at this point. We haven't heard anything from him. He had one appearance on Bret Baier, but that's it. But it seems like he definitely went into hiding. Gene, do you think this could be because of the repercussions he was seeing against him and his family that quieted him down?
It might be. Again, we have to look backwards, right? Because this was all put together in 2023 for the most part. So there's certainly opportunity they could have, injected something in there. But yeah, I wouldn't blame him for saying, no, I don't want to, he didn't want that level of exposure. Really, what was he going to say beyond what he already does say? And he was going to be criticized and tore apart for not saying anything new in the documentary. So I feel for him in that sense that no matter what he says, how he says it, people aren't going to be happy and critical of it. So why add any more fuel to the fire if he doesn't need to, if it doesn't immediately benefit him in some way?
Yeah, that makes sense. True, because otherwise he said all he had to say in the past, Congress hasn't acted on it. He's now working on Congress, hopefully to get them to move things along in the way that he was, trying to guide him in the past. And what's the point of coming out and making more statements if the statements and everything you've made in the past haven't been acted on? That's the biggest problem I've seen with Congress. There's a lot of talk, but not a lot of action going on beneath the sheets.
Yeah. And age of disclosure includes his testimony.
Yeah.
And, he very rightfully might feel this testimony speaks for itself and there's nothing more he can add to it, at the time that all that was being filmed.
Yeah. What was your thought on this one? Mr. Catfish threw us a super chat and asks, on Fox, a guy said Eisenhower dropped the ball. True. But Eisenhower, when he left, didn't he warn us about the military-industrial complex that he saw that what came together, actually even before his reign, but came into greater fruition to keep this stuff covered up?
I just recently quoted Eisenhower in a couple of things, and not only that warning of the military-industrial complex and its ability to essentially handing government over to the military-industrial complex. But even as a humanitarian in his famous speech on peace, where he talked about, every warship launched, every bomb dropped is a theft from those that, that are not clothed and are not fed. As I look in a lot of the work I've been doing and looking at the temporal timelines, I think Eisenhower plays a much more important and much more prophetic role in all of this. And when we consider what he knew coming out of World War II and what he talked about with the military industrial complex, I think was very prophetic and visionary in that sense, and was a sincere warning, because that's exactly what we see in this space now in the UAP industrial complexes I've been shouting about, is that we've created these systems that have allowed the exploitation of materials, none of which benefit for at least obviously humanity, but certainly sits there right aside and advances the defense complex.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's continue on with this and see where we're going to go. We're just getting into it, so here, let's continue.
Claims are unprovable, and Variety calls it inconclusive. For us to be comfortable doing stories about it, we have to believe that these documents and these experts that we're talking to are telling us the right thing. How do you think the country, the world, will react when, if this happens, it's disclosed?
You have a slow process of information coming out of government, mostly from Congress, from intelligence community officials who've retired. And what we're seeing is that despite the amount of coverage on this, there isn't a lot of pickup on it in media, and people aren't really absorbing the significance of it.
Anthropologist Peter Skafish is co-founder and director of research at the Sol Foundation, a group that helps fund research into UAPs. Skafish interviews and conducts field work with witnesses.
I've had a lot of conversations with retired intelligence community people who have more or less verified this stuff to me directly.
How many people know this?
This has been an 8-decade cover-up. The total list has to amount to 100 or more.
Presidents have access to all classified information, but it's unlikely the commander-in-chief reviews everything on any specific subject. Officials estimate there are billions of classified documents in existence, and as many as 50 million classified records are added every year.
Various presidents have been told, but many have not been told.
Retired Colonel Carl Nell was the Army director for supporting the UAP task force. Why would a president not be told?
There was a feeling that elected officials might not be sophisticated or intellectual enough to deal with that kind of complexity.
The Sol Foundation alleges in a report the Eisenhower administration issued a directive giving UFO decision-making the same status as nuclear war powers.
A man whom I trust from the Air Force has said that it was, as far as he knew, it was completely inaccurate to believe that they came from any outside or planet or otherwise.
The presidents, who have asked for briefings on UAPs, say they have not learned of any suspected cover-ups.
So far as I know, they're not hiding information.
It's never been my thing, I have to be honest. I have never been a believer.
Nell believes presidents could be uninformed because he says private companies oversee the programs.
Eisenhower administration may have allowed this to slip out of elected official control into an unelected body that would manage these programs.
You understand the skeptics, right? The people who say this is complete BS. This can't be true. You understand where they're coming from, that there's nothing to show besides the, these videos and the testimony, but for them, they haven't seen it in person.
Sure.
To confirm it.
100%, Brett. Yeah, we want that smoking gun. We want the evidence, the data. And I mean, the most I have knowledge of, though, that was convincing to me is I saw the classified videos that have since been declassified, taken by Navy F-18 aircraft.
In 2015, Gallaudet was commanding personnel during a naval exercise off the East Coast when he received an email warning of near mid-air collisions. Attached was a video of the suspected threat.
Wow, look at it fly!
Gallaudet says the next day the email disappeared from his account. The Pentagon would eventually declassify the video more than 5 years later.
Well, Gene, if you remember correctly, that video was declassified because it was quote-unquote leaked or given out to the public because it was declassified within the Pentagon as training materials, etc. They got it out. It showed out there. But there's a much bigger section of this video, higher resolution, actually, because if you remember, if you said, oh my God, look at that, there's a whole fleet of them. Right. Where's the evidence that shows the whole fleet, except that our government is saying, oh, are they saying it doesn't exist, or they can't release it? Because as soon as we had the first UAPTF hearing, new rules were put in place in the Pentagon that restricted the release of any photos or any videos of any UAP situations unless expressly provided. And since then, everything has been really clamped down. Your thoughts?
No, absolutely. And when you think in terms of these, the U.S. aircraft flying around, and there's a fleet of them. Can you just imagine if that camera panned up or the craft panned up, and you saw a sky full of these things? Listen, I think the panic factor is legitimate enough when it comes to the American public, that whatever imagery comes out has to be digestible. And, I would think a government video that shows a fleet of aircraft, in proximity to a fleet of naval ships, would up the freak out factor.
Right.
Oh, and I think there's an element too of protecting these craft as well. Particularly in the underwater scenario. I was on a space yesterday, and it came up about the underwater bases and don't we have a right to know? And yes, on the one hand, but on the other hand, what's going to happen if that does come out? If the location, of underwater base and civilization, right? Greer's going to launch a cruise ship line, to take people out there and divers, and look what we did to that Titanic, and look what we're doing to shark populations, and we're confusing them because everybody needs to go down and see for themselves or be the one that touches it, or knock on the door or the giant force field bubble, to get their interview and all the rest. And it's like, we also can't leave well enough alone to a certain extent.
Yeah.
To keep a healthy distance from things sometimes. Yeah. So again, lots of things to work through. I think before we can get to the big revelation.
Just for people to understand, Greer's organization, CSETI, that's out there, back in 2011, 2012, they were already pulling $500,000 in on a regular basis and expending it all, probably, of course, on executive salaries and such, because you know how, if you want to call it, non-for-profits go, Gene. So there's money into this. So you're talking about Greer launching a cruise line to come out there. I'm just laughing because it could be freaking accurate of what's going to go on.
Yeah, I mean, right. What else do you do? Even the Arctic or even Antarctic, right? What's the big money maker, off the coast of, Argentina? You can go on an ice breaking vessel as a tourist, And they take you as they're doing their ice breaking mission. You have a nice, lovely cabin. You know, all these people are gonna monetize whatever it is that they can monetize to start bringing people around. And you know, like I said, and the bad thing about it is you get the varying degrees of, say, ethical and moral, you know, behavior around this. You certainly have the ones who, you know, will want to study it and be respectful of the environments and all the rest. And then you'll have the ones who need to build their TikTok channel.
The people who want to exploit what's going on. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, I could see that going on, absolutely. And yeah, if there are bases, it's not like we're going to be having these dome cities like we used to see back in the 1970s cartoons, back in the day of these underwater cities. No, probably we're going to be talking about things that are well under the bedrock of the actual ocean itself, just like we see a lot of UAP going into and exiting volcanoes. That's definitely a place that's beyond our capabilities to go after, but interesting nonetheless.
But it's not going to stop somebody from trying if they think it's there, you know. And as much as we're in the instant gratification, instant information age, you know, I personally, my read on it is, even, you know, if disclosure came tomorrow, the big D disclosure, as Steve Bassett, you know, would call it, from the Oval Office, it is still going to be generations before we really see and understand what's going on.
Yeah. Let's see if I can find this. No, I'm not finding it. I'm looking for a picture from the old 70s cartoon to bring it up. Either way, great points, my friend. Let me go ahead. I've got someone else I'm bringing the back here. Let's do this. Oh, he's already here. We're good. All right, so let's continue on with this clip, and here we go.
The Navy is sitting on a trove of UAP video data that they're not releasing.
That video and others prompted lawmakers to call for more transparency. Congress has requested reports from the Defense Department on sightings, and in each document, investigators found no links to extraterrestrial sources.
We take all incursions into our operating spaces seriously.
The All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office is the government's current group looking into UAPs. Its findings have been consistent with past Pentagon investigations.
To date. Now, Gene, before we get deep into this, ARROW is just another Project Blue Book. It's a scoop up the information, declassify what they can, call anything that could be possibly real, balloons or other phenomena that's going on, like the old, if you want to call it swamp gas. They've even gone and said the Aguadilla, Puerto Rico incident. Did they claim that was balloons or something flying around in rings around the airport before flying out to the ocean, going underwater and accelerating? It's just the foxes are running the hen house.
Yeah, and I don't, you know, I don't necessarily think that they're intentionally being part of the cover up. I think the structure of the organization itself is such that they are limited in how far it is they're supposed to go, or they can go. And I think back to that situation with Tim Phillips, you know, when he was told, you know, well, why don't you go out to New Mexico and take a look at some things? You know, and he goes out there and he sees, okay, yes, here's this advanced technology. And they can show you the last 25 years of research that had been done to get there. And that checks the box for the ARROW mission. The problem is you need to look at the 40 years before that previous 25 years and look at the origins and look at the you know, how that science advanced and where it came from, and you know, what informed the science today from day one, you know, or day +1. And that's where I think ARROW misses the opportunity. Their job isn't to chase down, you know, the origins. Their job is just to come to a reasonable conclusion on what they have in front of them in that time frame and not chase the rest of it. And so the organization by design is therefore somewhat more symbolic or just checks a box.
Yeah, checks the box, does, but it almost, what ARO was doing is exactly what John Kirby had talked about, saying, okay, the UAPTF is gone. This is when they announced the AOIMSG, which is, I forget exactly what that stood for at the time. But if you look at it, they said there's not going to be a regular pulse of information coming out to the public. We're not going to report on stuff. We're just going to go ahead and let people know kind of what's going on. But on the inside of the government, we're not going to be reporting to the public. And that's kind of what really happened with regards to ARO. It's just turned into a disinformation campaign versus an acknowledgement. Because if you look back, we had the reports coming of the UAPTF, which came under the U.S. Navy. They were actually truthful, where they were reporting on stuff that they had seen in specific theaters, the same theaters of operation that the Air Force was operating in. Now, the Air Force didn't go ahead and release any information. They're acting like nothing happened, but the Navy has all this stuff, which kind of shows that we've got some parts of the DoD that are cooperating, but other parts that are endemic. Remember, the Air Force was set up again at within weeks after Roswell. There's definitely an unequal amount of cover-up going on.
Yeah, and in Arrow, I was just on there earlier today, in fact, and looking, and it kind of grabbed my attention that they haven't produced anything in 2025.
Nope.
So I think that, they've gone from trying to cover anything up to just inaction.
I believe there's a yearly report.
Action is just do nothing.
I believe there's a yearly report that's supposed to happen every year around October 1st.
Yeah.
That every single year doesn't happen. And look, we haven't even gotten the second half of that historic UAP report yet. Gee, I wonder why.
Yeah, exactly. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I got you. Let's continue on. Here we go.
ARO has found no verifiable evidence for claims that the U.S. government or private companies have access to or have been reverse engineering extraterrestrial technology.
Okay. Extraterrestrial technology. We've been bringing this up. They always call it extraterrestrial technology. If it's technology that's from this planet, but from a different non-human intelligence, or if it's technology that's from another dimension, a multidimensional entity that we're dealing with here, he's actually telling the truth, because extraterrestrial, in the way they're terming it, is something from another planet out there in space. But if it's from within here or from within another dimension that's outside of here, it doesn't qualify, does it?
Absolutely. It's just like, no evidence of non-human intelligence, biologics, does not mean that, as some people describe it, that there's cousins of humans. So they might be humans, just another version, or future humans, or anything like that. Language is very important. I'll go back to, the whole change from UFO to UAP. It's done for a specific purpose, and you have to consider each of those words very, very carefully. It's, whether it's intel or investigations, the words people select to use are very important and very telling.
Yes, absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself. Let's continue on with this. Here we go.
Some former officials claim the U.S. government does have evidence.
We learned that the U.S. government was involved in a long-running secret war with other nations to collect and reverse engineer vehicles not made by humans.
Somewhere in this country, there are craft that are being held that have landed here or crashed here, and there are biologics, non-human bodies.
That's correct.
Someplace in this country?
Someplace.
In this program?
Correct.
The AARO has acknowledged an effort to create a UAP.
So there we go. We've got Carl Nell admitting, just like David Grush admitted that with Brett Baer, that we do have crash craft. We do have bodies of a non-human intelligence. He called it biologics, and he made it, took it down to bodies. And Carl Nell, decorated colonel, never made general, but he was there. He did a lot of things, and he's calling it out as well. So, it's not like we just have one individual who's calling out. There are multiple people who are all coming forward saying there's a reality to it.
Yeah. And back to what we said earlier, they're not doing this without having been cleared to do it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And particularly somebody, like Colonel Carl Mellon, right? He still has a pension from the government. There are levers that can be pulled. I think we talked about it last night, the clearances, right? People who leave government who have particularly a TS clearance, that is their golden ticket in civilian employment, particularly agencies that, contract with the government. That's upwards of $60,000-$100,000 savings to bring on somebody that already has that if you're a contractor. So, important thing to keep in mind as these people are saying these things, that number one, they're not saying something that isn't true, because that in and of itself would cause their, mental health, everything else to be in question, that could affect their clearance. And they're not saying something that they already haven't been allowed to say, because that would affect their clearance and their ability to make a livelihood. So it's very clear from all of these statements collectively. And so this is just a matter of the word spreading and the general public who haven't been engaged, in the issue, beginning to get their minds around it.
Yeah. And don't forget, people ask about their livelihood and stuff going along those times. Matthew Brown, who was a whistleblower who came out, who disclosed about the secret programs that are going on behind the scenes, he's unemployed now. He's lost his clearances. He's lost his opportunity to get employment. His clearances, like you're talking about, is a golden ticket to being able to jump into defense contractors and other spots outside of the government that are still feeding the government machine. But by him coming forward, it basically cut off his ability to earn a living for his family, which is hard.
Yeah, I mean, Dylan Borland's, almost is in the same, situation. I haven't seen any updates yet, and and the kind of the shameful part about it is that we scream support the whistleblowers. Poor guys can't work, and then they put out some T-shirts and a book, and everyone starts crucifying them for being grifters.
Son of a bitch. Yeah.
I mean, like they can't, and we want them to come forward.
From the same people who are supporting Stephen Greer and idolizing him, they're taking the actual whistleblowers who are coming forward and calling their grifters for doing this stuff. It's crazy.
Right. I mean, and what else do they have? What else are they going to do? And we want them on every podcast, and we want to interview them, and but nobody wants to pay them for an interview. How are these people supposed to live then if we're asking them to come forward, we're asking them to put their careers on the lines, and then we are not willing to support their business efforts or the only way they have to monetize anything that they have.
But it's not just that. It's going after them, saying for calling them grifters and stuff, but the animosity, the anger, the vitriol that's put towards a lot of people that have been trying to bring disclosure forward. I said it earlier, probably during the show, and I know before the show, as Lou said, it's going to take a while.
Yeah.
Go find a hobby. Come back in 5 years, check out where we're at, see if the needle is moved. It's never going to happen. It's a process. He always called it as a marathon that we're just starting.
Exactly. But again, we just want everything now.
Yep. We want our disclosure. We want it now.
Right. And then, and how do we want it? Well, we don't know, everybody has it their own way that
Yeah.
they, think it needs to be, and all the rest of it.
But
It's a no-win situation.
Yeah, but try and get the people who want to believe and the other people who also potentially believe, but they're saying the people over there are lying. If we could all just come together as a group and actually get some momentum behind us more, we've seen all the different protests going on for government, against the government and different things. When I've seen them trying to get protests together for people in DC or in Ohio, we're at the offices of, what was his name again? One of the members of Congress who was against disclosure. You got 10, 12 people showing up. That's it. There's not there's a lot of, armchair quarterbacks who are out there talking about this, but when it actually gets out there, we need to come together. We need to go ahead and protest against this. We need to come together, a community. It falls apart with apathy.
Yeah. And on top of it, whatever comes out, if it doesn't fit whatever somebody already thinks, then that just means it's another part of the cover up going on.
Yeah.
If whatever information comes out doesn't match what they already believe, then it's just more of it's disinformation.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more, my friend. Let's go ahead and continue on with this. Let's get back to this. Here we go. Let's play this.
Non-human bodies?
That's correct.
Someplace in this country?
Someplace.
In this program?
Correct.
The AARO has acknowledged an effort to create a UAP recovery program called Kona Blue, but says it was later canceled because it lacked merit.
Right, but RO said it was shut down because it lost merit. However, Lakatsky, who was the head of the OSAP program, which eventually turned into ATIP. Everything was shut down except the ATIP portion of it. He came out and said, no, it's never been shut down. It's still going on today. So who do you believe? The office of the cover-up, or do we believe the person who was in charge of the program?
Well, again, I think, language. Maybe they didn't, formalize it under that same name, but the same activities still happen. Just happens under some memorandum number rather than a formal title. It's almost like the same thing with legacy program. I don't imagine there's a door that you knock on to visit the legacy program. It's a system. It is people who inherent to their position have access to pull whatever levers it is that they are pulling. It's one of those dotted line, you're not finding it on an org chart type activities that just comes with the job.
Yeah, absolutely. Quick question for you from the audience, bring it in. I'll kind of turn it this way. We know that we've seen the Skinny Bob videos that potentially came from the KGB back in the day out of Russia, which your father-in-law had all the research into the saucers and stuff at that time. Do you think he was real? Or
I think it's possible.
Yeah.
I'm not a analyst in video analyst or things. I'm open to all possibilities. Even before I came into this space, and people would say, "Oh, what do you think?" Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
I've seen enough having nothing to do with UAP, on just how the basics of government works and media and everything else, that there is the vast majority of things I can say, makes sense, logical. Yeah, it's possible. On the flip side, there's people that I hear that, talk about their inside information, and connections into government and whatnot. And again, laughable if there's no way it works like that. Yet they still have followings and people who believe them. So, I'm pretty much, if needle litmus, if I say, yeah, I think it's within the realm of possibility, then definitely is. If it, if I'm saying it's out there and this isn't, this just isn't the way life works, then just discount it. But yeah, the Skinny Bob videos, all that, I have no reason to think not.
Yeah, ditto. You just look at some of the muscle structures and how they're moving and the movements and stuff, and it's the muscle structures, especially in the neck, when the head is turning and some of this stuff, you just see a lot of muscles all moving around that I think possibly was beyond CG at that time when they're putting it together. And if someone did put it together, it's one hell of a stunt. But usually when someone does that, like they had with the MH370 videos, the person who actually makes it comes out and says, hey, yeah, that was mine. Really good, huh? It's on my resume.
Yeah. And there's, again, the timings, the amount of it that's released too, I think coincides with, somebody that, was able to grab a piece rather than, and there's not a whole series of them. There's, and all the circumstances around it, don't have any sort of indication that, it was just a grifting job or disinformation.
Exactly. Really quickly, I want to go ahead and thank some people from some super chats we've gotten so far. Liz W. This is Liz W. Just threw out a super chat for us for $20. Thank you very much. Interesting discussion. Thank you, Gina, of course, for this conversation. Mr. Catfish 2100 brought up and said that Eisenhower let it slip through his fingers. Unselected officials control the subject instead of the President of the United States. Eisenhower warned us after losing control. At least that's what was said by James Fox. Vern Dude said, beginning with Disclosure tonight, Thomas and Gene, thank you very much. And also Mr. Catfish 2100 on Fox, a guy said Eisenhower dropped the ball. True, and we've talked about these things. So yeah.
And I'll stick up for Ike. I don't think he dropped the ball. I think he just realized that the system and the mechanisms were there. And that even as president, he was not going to be able to control what was going on. And he did what he could to warn us. Yeah. And it fell on deaf ears.
Yeah. No one really knew what the hell he was talking about back then, but we look at it now and we can see where it's going. So let's get back to this video and continue on with it. So here we go.
That no extraterrestrial craft or non-human entities were ever collected.
Knowing what you know, is it conceivable there could be a government program that you don't know about?
I think it's conceivable that there are government programs that we don't know about.
Democratic Arizona Senator Mark Kelly logged more than 5,000 flying hours during his time in the Navy and spent more than 50 days in outer space as a shuttle pilot.
Has anything happened in space or at the International Space Station that might signal that there's alien life out there?
So I have made 4 trips to the space station, all about 2 weeks in length, over a decade. And I have no personal experience with this. I have 54 days in space, which might sound like a lot. My twin brother, 520 days in space. People often look at him and say, hey, you must have seen something in all that time you've spent in space. And the answer is the same as the answer for me. Haven't seen anything that indicates anything visiting, our planet.
Obviously, there's a lot of interest in these.
Believable or not believable, Gene? I don't believe him at this point.
He said he hasn't seen anything that indicates nothing visited our planet.
Right.
Doesn't mean they didn't see anything that doesn't indicate that there isn't something out there.
It's the words that are carved, and I would be wondering to ask him, are you under any non-disclosure agreements from NASA to discuss any things that you may have seen in space that you can't talk about? Not talking about the scientific programs of what was going on in the station, but beyond that in the scope of your abilities. So it's, great person to say things, but they never try to qualify the answers that they get and come back with that gotcha to say, where are you coming from on that? And that would be decent.
Right. And again, he's got his political career. Mm-hmm. He's got to worry, if he doesn't get reelected, what's he going to do? Where does he go to work? Can he go back into NASA? So, he doesn't want to burn any bridges. He probably is still under, a lot of these, holding on to your clearance. He probably still has the clearance with NASA.
Yeah.
And even if he stopped working and it went inactive, he still has a period of time, upwards of 20 years sometimes, before you can actually talk about anything that's going on. It's like even in the military, right? When you're
Continue on, Gene. I'll be right back. Just continue on for a second. No, just continue with what you were saying. Oh, you somehow muted yourself, Gene. There you go.
There we go. Sorry about that. Yeah. So even in the military, when we're talking about clearances and talking about, secret information and controlled information, you're a pilot and you get shot down, in hostile territory, and you get captured. When pilots and people, that are in combat zones get trained for survival and escape and evasion, they want you to go try and make it for 72 hours. And whether that 72 hours is a combination of running and hiding and avoiding the enemy, or if you are captured and you are interrogated and put under torture, 72 hours of keeping your mouth shut about the mission. After, that period, you're kind of more than welcome to blab about everything you know, because once they know you were down and you were in hostile territory and or you were potentially in enemy hands, then the plans begin to change. And so you're not jeopardizing other missions. So in the same way, these people that have clearances in the jobs, the things that they've seen, it's just exponential to 10 years, 20 years, because after that period, the stuff that you knew that was secret is more than likely not secret anymore, or has changed so significantly, you're not really giving away anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Not believable. Let's
Short
continue.
answer.
Yeah, let's continue on. Here we go.
Answer for me. Haven't seen anything that indicates anything visiting, our planet.
Obviously, there's a lot of interest in these stories. Some people call it crazy, but these reports are happening. We'll continue to follow the UAP stories as more information comes to light, and we'll see how the Trump administration responds to all of these reports. We'll send it back to you.
All right, really quick thing is we're just talking about what Mark Kelly was saying and everything, things in space. There have been reports, confidential reports that I'm privy to, that craft have been seen coming in from space, entering our atmosphere at a specific point, going down to the surface of the planet and doing what they're doing, and then coming back up and leaving the upper atmosphere from the exact same coordinates that were that they entered in. And that's something that's beyond the scope and ability of anybody, of any, if you want to call it, life form on this planet. It shows there's something bigger going on. But part of the problem is we've got the Space Force that's probably been doing the observations on this. And along with them doing that, they are part of the Air Force, which has had the clampdown going against disclosure, not moving it forward. And that's where kind of, we got the Space Force. I guess it made sense to have it go as part of the Air Force. But do you think there would have been a different tune to the Space Force if the U.S. Navy actually was in charge of it?
Probably in that extent, and I think I talked to Ryan Graves about this, and I asked him that question. I said, why is it that the culture of the Navy seems to be so much more open and transparent as opposed to the Air Force? And the way he explained it, he said, because we're out there on our own. He said, for as big as a fleet may be, as a carrier group or a destroyer group might be, we are in the middle of nowhere alone. And so they have a much different view than somebody's up in the sky for 40 minutes at a time,
right,
zooming around. The psychological and impact of it, I guess, is much different. And so in that way, you'd almost think this NASA would be much more aligned with the Navy in talking about it, in so much as you've got, albeit a couple of people that are out there on their own. So why do you not want them and their families and everybody around them to not know that we have some sort of control over it, or we have, if not control, at least an awareness of it, and we have assessment or analysis that it doesn't pose a threat, as opposed to making them live with the burden of something like this that just challenges challenges your sanity, just challenges your own perception of life, particularly the first times you come in contact with it.
Yeah. Well, I hear you completely, and it comes down to about the intent of these craft, and that's one thing we've heard a bunch of times lately, is the government doesn't know what the intent is of these craft, but yet they've been going and observing them since 47, if not before then. Do you think that's just a ruse to us saying, oh, we don't know what they're doing, what their intent is? If they've been making all these observations over a period of time, they're going to start to see patterns, and intents and behaviors should emerge.
They should, absolutely. And I lean more towards the idea that there are varying intents, right? There are varying levels of interaction. There's varying areas of interest that each one of these different types of craft and whomever it is that they represent have. They all have different missions going on, some of which don't involve us whatsoever, others that may deeply involve us. And so it's, how do they, again, it's the amount of information that needs to be released, the drinking through the fire hose. In what order do you take that?
Yeah.
Do you take it with, we don't know, or yes, we know, and here's the 40 different versions of what we're dealing with, and we have to unload this on everybody all at once.
Yeah. Now, if you think about the approved statement that Elizondo made in the Age of Disclosure, there's another. They are the apex predator on this planet, and we're not the top of the food chain. That doesn't sound like, love and light and rainbows and glitter and unicorns. That sounds like there's something a lot more serious going on involving us, because if they're the apex predator, we're not the top of the food chain. That means they are, which means we're on the menu.
Well, and you could liken it to, I think it was Hunter S. Thomas, used to say at the shoreline, civilization ends and we all enter the food chain. And we are not always all on top. We're not always on top of it. Same holds true there in the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
So is there a parallel in that sense that, no, we're not the top of the food chain now, even on land. However, don't go poking the shark and we should be okay.
Yeah. Which seems like in many different ways we may be poking the shark. And if we do go up and start off nuclear tests again, like has been rumored or stated, could be coming from our president, would it be just to go ahead and test the stuff to make sure it still works, or it also be to see who shows up and what we can do to them?
Could be. Very likely. Only time's going to tell on that one, Thomas.
Oh, absolutely, my friend. Now, one thing I want to go ahead and bring up, something that I noticed out there. We've heard there's been a lot of negative press about the Age of Disclosure coming from the golden one, Dr. Stephen Greer back in the day. And this is just something, when I went to Amazon to look at it, I saw the one next to the other. And you just have to wonder if Dr. Stephen Greer is that much upset with the Age of Disclosure and what's going on. Why in the heck is he copying it? Because if you look at, you have the Age of Disclosure, almost the same font. You have all these different people walking up to the Capitol versus a bunch of military people. And when you go to Amazon to go look at this stuff and you search for Age of Disclosure, right next to it, you get the Battle of Disclosure. It's almost like they're trying to prey on people who may be confused and say, oh, wow, that one looks better. That's the one I want to go ahead and see.
Yeah, well, I laugh because it reminds me of again, post-Soviet Union world, and you'd go over there and you see, their version of Mickey Mouse, and they have their own unique spin on, whatever the big trend, the more popular thing is, as if to say, this is as good. Here's just, our version of it. And yeah, you're right. Same thing. Somebody goes on, oh, I heard something. Yeah, there's a thing about disclosure. I got to look it up. And then it's a 50-50 shot. And one of them costs $25 and the other one doesn't. So let me do this one for, that's included in my plan rather than the one that actually drove you there.
Yeah. That's one thing.
You
go ahead.
It's there's a term I want to use. I can't. It's just blank blocking.
Yeah. Cock blocking. I'll say it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jay Albertson, your hand is up, my friend.
Yeah, I was just going to say that today I got an email from the Stephen Greer email chain or whatever, and they said that the Age of Deception has just come out by Stephen Greer. So I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah.
Well, he has no vested business interest in it being successful.
No, just making money.
Right. And that's, again, listen, and not unique to this community or anything like that. But
is this the Stephen Greer film? It's a Stephen Greer film, Gene?
The Battle for Disclosure?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Probably directed by Michael Mazzola as well.
Yeah. Instead, it's so many ways. Instead of just cheering on something else that is helping the core issue that you believe in, he's more worried about market share. Right. Instead of looking at things like Age of Disclosure and saying, this is going to be good for everybody.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's not the plan I had for it. So therefore it's not good.
Yeah.
I think we talked with last night. We were kind of going through it after the show. He has an entire business ecosystem set up. Don't disrupt it. And that's what he sees this as, is the disruption. Dan Farrar is getting all the, news interviews and whatnot. So here's, his answer to it, to try and steal away a little bit of that market share. It's,
Exactly.
Pure business and has nothing to do with the effort that everybody is trying to make. And he's just, again, probably just being more counterproductive to the overall mission, the shared mission of disclosure, by trying to, make sure he can still make his car payment at the end of the month, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that and a hell of a lot more, because he's got numerous nonprofit organizations under his belt, all of which he's the directors of, which he gets salaries from. So it's not like he's out there begging for peanuts. He's pulling in a decent paycheck, and everyone deserves it. But again, it's the same people who are calling Lou and others a grifter are ignoring what this other gentleman is doing, and it just, it shows you where their reliance is and potentially where their paycheck is coming from.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's an ecosystem.
Oh gosh, yes.
Created. Doesn't take much to chase it all down and break it down, to have that understanding of, what, when somebody is saying something, what is motivating them to say it. And again, there's nothing wrong with it. You got something to sell. You got, fine. Just be transparent about it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, my friend. One thing I want to get up is I've got a bunch of different tweets we can go ahead and cover up at this point in the show. Let me go ahead and bring this one up. This is a massive wall of plasma on the sun. It's over 100,000 kilometers high, or 8 times the diameter of Earth. Let me go. It actually looks like it's bigger than that. Let me go ahead and bring this one up here. Here we go. This was just going on recently in the sun. I believe this was on the about 2-3 days ago, maybe on the 25th, I believe this one it was. But just massive structures going on. Yes, we're still in solar maximum, although things are calming down. The sun isn't done yet. We've got a whole year, if not more, of additional things that can go and happen. In the last, if you want to call it sunspots, that gave us their last X flares are just about coming around on the northwest edge of the sun, and they'll be coming around into our direction again and maybe shooting off more fireworks our way. Let me go ahead and get on to the next one. We saw about Marco. Yeah, winter nights, beautiful. We've got the stuff on there. Let me go ahead and just jump back as I'm going through this really quick. All right, so we've got an unconfirmed video of one of the drones that was shut down at Eindhoven Airport in the Netherlands earlier this week. Let's go ahead and play this one here. It's just a short clip of some blurry video, but you know what's better than what we've seen so far. If you want to get.
Yeah. I used to fly out of Eindhoven Airport back in the day. That's where
Oh, you did? Nice.
Yeah, cheap easy is like a $19 flight between Eindhoven and London City Airport.
Right. So there we go. One of those blurry things up there. It's always hard to go ahead and get one of these, especially when on your cell phone, but you've got it. But I also have a
Bring you some breaking news coming.
33-second clip. Let's go ahead and talk about this. And I've got some more stuff to go ahead and show on these drones as well. So on this one is saying that Netherlands Defense Ministry confirms multiple drone sightings have forced a suspension of air traffic at Eindhoven Airport. On Friday, the Dutch Air Force fired but failed to take down drones hovering over the Vokel Air Base, home to the USAF aircraft and U.S. nuclear weapons. Go figure, nuclear weapons. That is a place we might see UAP at, because they are very interested in our nuclear weapons. And this is a place where they have had sightings of large triangle craft in the past. Let's listen in.
Let's bring you some breaking news coming into us from the Reuters news agency and from the Dutch defense minister. They're saying that air traffic at Eindhoven Airport has been suspended due to multiple drone sightings. So air traffic at Eindhoven Airport suspended due to multiple drone sightings. We understand at least 2 flights have been diverted from the airport. That coming into us from the Dutch Defense Ministry. We will, of course, bring you more updates and developments on that story as we get them.
Absolutely. And if I go back to the post, I believe before this, we've got someone taking a look at the overall videos of what was going on. This one was filmed at Hechtel Escalate, approximately 30 to 40 kilometers from the airport in the Netherlands. Absolutely silent, without propellers or any other visible rotors. So we got a screenshot of something, kind of looks like a plane, but there's silent going on. Some more screenshots going of what they're showing. And this is a small video, but have to say, although it's silent, it looks like the morphology of a traditional plane than it does look like anything that's UAP.
Yeah, and those flashing lights don't hurt that theory either.
Yeah, especially when recently we've seen videos of what UAP do, how they appear, how they disappear, the kind of behaviors they have. Again, this just looks like it potentially be more of the, if you want to call it, Russian incursions going on. No, I do have a video up coming to us from Michigan. And if you're in the Michigan area, you're in Wisconsin, you're in the upper Midwest, Chicago area around it. Yes, you've been getting a bunch of snow. I've heard we've had anywhere from 6 to 8 to 10 inches of snow in the Chicago suburbs, and there's a lot of other places that are still having it coming down directly. So if you're in one of those areas, you're lucky, because I love the snow to look at, not to go out there and shovel it. Come on. Let's move along here. Let's get back into this. What else do we have in our tweets that we haven't covered this week? Okay, we've got that one. We've got that one. We've got that one. All right, this is interesting. This is something called the Sage Wall that's in Montana. It was found in 1996. Now, our government says it's a natural geological formation. But if you look at that doesn't quite fit the bill of a natural geographic formation, does it, Gene?
Not in any. I'm no geologist, but I've seen a lot of rocks, and yeah, I've never seen them stacked so lovely and so perfectly. Yeah, I don't have an explanation for
Yeah,
that
neither do
one.
I, but it's some of those
Besides,
things.
you know,
We think we're the most advanced humans. It's the only times it happen. But when you see stuff like this, see stuff that's down in Peru, other areas, you just have to go ahead and look at it and say, yeah, maybe there was something bigger going on here before we were here.
yeah, I mean, you know, I don't know what happened to. I don't know. We don't know. Yeah, it's you know, behooves me.
Oh, exactly. Let me jump back into this again and see what else I have coming up here on our smorgasbord. All right, I do have some more shots of it. Let me bring this one back. Here we go again. Here's some more shots from above, and then we've got another one of it. And I guess it could potentially be a natural geographic formation. I'm trying to say National Geographic, but it's a natural geographic formation, but interesting to say nonetheless of the mysteries that are on this planet and around us on a regular basis. So let me jump back into here, see what else I've got on here. Let me jump out of this post. We saw the stuff on Jay Stratton. Not sure if you heard about this one, but let me play this one on loop. Bring it up. It's interesting to say the least. Russia has halted human space flight for the first time since 1961, following an incident at the Baikonur Cosmodrome. During
Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan.
Yeah, during the launch of the Soyuz MS-28, the service tower on the launch pad 31, the only pad used for crewed missions, collapsed. The rocket's exhaust plume damaged key elements to the launch structure, forcing an indefinite suspension of both Soyuz and Progress missions. The cosmonauts were unharmed, luckily, but the launch complex now requires massive repairs. Roscosmos claims that the damage can be fixed, but experts note that Russia has not experienced a pause like this since 1961. Shows not everybody's perfect.
No, absolutely. And if you know the slightest thing about Russian infrastructure, particularly anything built during the time of the Soviet Union, the fact that they not only didn't have an incident like this since 1961, that this in and of itself wasn't more catastrophic to begin with. So those cosmonauts are some of the luckiest people on Earth in this moment.
So it sounds like the rocket took off. That was fine, but the actual system for launching got screwed up, and it's probably catastrophic failure in certain areas when, unfortunately, since it was built such a long time ago, it's going to take them some time to figure out the engineering to put this Humpty Dumpty back together again.
Yeah, and you know, during the period, a lot of that infrastructure that was built, it was a common practice. You know, you have a specification on how to build something, and all the materials, right down to the smallest screw and bolt, have to meet certain criteria. And you know, the most common practice between whoever it was that issued that contract and whoever it was that was doing the construction was, I'm going to use this other material instead, or this other specification that's just as good, but it's a little bit cheaper, and then we're going to split the difference on the cost, which
no, we're going to take the money, tell them that we're getting the good stuff, and pocket the rest.
Well, right, exactly.
And share it with the people behind the scenes.
And the theory would be that you're doing preventative maintenance, you know, ongoing. And so in 5 and 10 years, you're going to realize that the thing that was supposed to last 30 years isn't going to last 30 years. We're going to be out of this job, so it doesn't matter. And they're going to fix it, you know, down the road. The problem was they also didn't do that preventative maintenance, and all the thing, you know, things start collapsing. And
they don't have a backup for their crewed program. This was the only towers that they had that could accommodate crew, which is interesting that they've gotten it down to just one, but I guess it's worked with the lack of funding they may have in their country right now. So,
yeah, so very impressive that you got hats off to them that nothing's happened since 1961. Hats off to them that this wasn't catastrophic. But you're right. How they're going to re-engineer this now is going to be a mystery for a while, I think.
Yeah, they're going to have to find some engineers they haven't sent to the fronts yet.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see what else I've got going on here. All right. Got that one. We've got that one. Nope, can't show that one. It's hilarious. Nope, can't talk about that one. All right. We've got an interesting one here coming from Newsmax, where we've got Representative Tim Burchett talking with good old Avi Loeb about 3i Atlas, that mysterious comet that keeps on coming up in conversations. And Avi Loeb wants to figure out what this is. He wants to get $1 billion to figure out what this stuff is, to look at these types of things in the future. But going ahead and LARPing with all these additional claims he keeps on coming with on a regular basis isn't going to get us anywhere. Remember, Dr. Avi Loeb is the one who conspired with Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick to attack the Ukrainian Academy of Sciences, or astronomical division, to go ahead and say the observations they were making of UAP are unfounded and are fake. Now, even though they came back, the National Academy of Sciences Ukraine came back and did a rebuttal to Avi, he never picked it up again, but just shows you he is someone who's really tied into the disinformation complex. So let's go ahead and bring up this video here and give it a whirl and see what... well, this is probably an older one, but we'll play it anyway. Here we go.
Alien bases right now sitting on the ocean floor on this planet. Is that accurate?
I would say that's pretty accurate.
Can you go into more detail? How long have they been here? Where are they?
Well, I'm extrapolating all this with my East Tennessee vernacular. So we've got five or six deep water areas of our oceans. We actually know more about the surface of the moon than we do about these areas. And these are areas where we have a high frequency of UFO or UAP sightings. We've had naval folks have told me pretty high up that they've actually tracked these things. Now, we have stuff that can go underwater probably 30 to 40 miles an hour, maybe something a little faster that the Chinese haven't stole from us yet. And we've tracked things big as a football field going 200 miles an hour. Now, I realize in the water you extrapolate that to knots and all that, but just for good old East Tennessee common sense, 200 miles an hour, something the size of a football field. And we don't know what it is. And these are in these areas. So, yeah, there's something going on there. And whether it's something that's been here for millennial or whatever, and I'm not afraid of it. I'm kind of like Dr. Loeb. I love to study this kind of stuff. It's the scientific material there he's the one that disclosed some things that were found that were extraterrestrial in our oceans. And, he's brave enough, I believe, to come forward with those. So I'm looking forward to some more talks about this. But I think I've kicked the hornet's nest because it was just in a casual conversation with a blogger, and I discussed it. It wasn't in a classified setting, so I could talk about it. But I always remember the last thing this one high-ranking official told me as he left my office. He was right close to me as I am to my phone in my barn right now, and he said,
"Yes, that there are."
Oh, and they cut it.
Yeah, I would get love and dollar signs in those eyes right there.
Who, Avi? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's just got the biggest shit-eating grin I've ever seen him with, and just talking about this whole thing, because he knows that's what it was great, because he was going and searching around, was it around not Fiji, the southern Indian Ocean. They were going ahead and looking for an extra, what do you call it?
An anomaly?
Yeah, an anomaly that came in basically straight in as they call it like it was shot out of a shotgun or shot out of a rifle, came in and hit the planet. It was an interstellar object, they're calling, that came in and impacted right by the islands. And, it's somewhere down near Tonga. I don't remember the exact name, but it's...
Oh, a reef? Was it and then a reef formed around it?
No, it wasn't a reef. They were just going off over, looking down on the ground underwater, and on the surface of the ocean floor. They brought up stuff. They were saying, here we go. We've got evidence of this interstellar object that impacted the planet. But the reality of what they were bringing up was actually coal slag.
Well, that's disappointing for him.
Yeah. It usually is. Let me see what else we've got going here. I'm just going back through all the news we've got put together.
Burchett always comes across like he's like, there's a sense of frustration in his voice, when he talks about it, because he seems so definitive and so settled on it. And it's like he just doesn't know what else to say or do to push it forward. I always get that sense from him.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, my friend. Absolutely. Well, if you look at the time, we've had a good show so far. It's been a great time. I appreciate you and everyone in the back coming out to it. I want to go ahead and thank everybody for the wonderful super chats that we had today. I don't even have my sound effects up and going. Let me find those. All right, come on. You can get there. There we go. Again, I want to thank everybody for your great super chats, for coming out to this episode of Disclosure tonight. Happy Saturday, everybody. Hopefully it's a good cyber weekend for you guys to go ahead and enjoy the show. I want to thank again Mr. Catfish 2100, the Vern Dude, Mr. Catfish 2100 again, and this Liz W for the wonderful super chats for tonight's show. We're a fan-funded program. We appreciate everybody's love and support. If you haven't subscribed for us yet, do us a favor. Give us a like. Give us a subscription. We'd love to have you back as a regular here on Disclosure tonight. Gene, thank you for coming out tonight, my friend.
Thank you. I always enjoy being here, and thanks to everybody in the back and the questions online and the continued support. And we just keep breaking it down and bringing it to the people as we can.
Absolutely. And I hope everyone enjoyed the show. And as we usually say at the end of every episode of Disclosure tonight, eyes open, no fear, be safe, everybody, but
go back to Party City where you belong.
Absolutely. We'll catch you in the flip side. Good night, everybody. See you soon. I'll come back now here.